Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back for another week of our science calls here with Rain International. Over these last several weeks, it's been awesome to be able to have Dr. Hassan, Dr. Dang, and today we'll be able to hear from Dr. Walker on some of the probiotics, prebiotics, and inulin. I know that's a lot of people have questions about inulin and about a prebiotic and what those are and why they're important in a total prebiotic probiotic blend. So we're excited to be able to learn from Dr. Walker today on that front. And we encourage each and every one of you, as you continue to learn this information, take this information, go out there and continue to share with all of your other friends and family and acquaintances online, social distancing, or however you can to keep the word moving forward. But Dr. Walker, I am so pleased to be able to have you here with us again today. And I'm excited to turn the time over to you. Sit back and learn myself a little bit about what you've prepared for us today. So ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Walker.
Well, thanks, Russ. Just a couple things that I'll be talking about today. What are the current trends in dietary fiber intake? What are dietary fibers and prebiotics? What are some of their general health benefits? What prebiotics are in pure? How much should I be taking each day? How many grams of fiber do I need? And how can we consume more? So those are just some of the bullets I want to talk about today. So based on a couple surveys between 2004 and 2014, these are what we eat in America, the NHANES studies. We've seen a small increase in whole grain intake from about 0.6 of a gram or 0.6 of an ounce, so half an ounce to about an ounce between those two survey periods, 2004 to the end of 2014. But we're not really seeing a change in fruit and vegetable intake as a population in the United States. But we know that fruits and vegetables and whole grains are good for us. They help reduce the risk of cardiovascular diseases, improve our they're beneficial for cognitive impairment and dementia, obesity, hypertension, stroke, and diabetes. And that's because they're rich in vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, and fiber. So that's our talk today, is about fiber. So, adequate fiber intakes linked to improved digestive health, reduced risk of heart disease, stroke, hypertension, certain cancers, and adequate intake in the United States, based on the most recent U.S. dietary guidelines for Americans, is about 14 grams of dietary fiber per 1,000 kilocalories or calories per day. So that's about 21 to 38 grams for adults in the United States. That's how much we should be consuming. Examples of, fiber content in certain foods, just so you have a reference point: half a cup of navy beans is 9 grams, an ounce of pumpkin seeds is 5 grams, and half a cup of raspberries is about 4 grams. But the big question is, are we consuming enough in the US? Overall, fiber continues to be singled out as one of the most important nutrients of public health concern in the United States. But we have what's called the fiber gap in the United States. And that's because median intake is about 12 to 14 grams per day, and less than 5% of Americans are meeting the adequate intake recommendations. So that 21 to 38 grams, only less than 5% are attaining that level of fiber intake each day. So why is there a fiber gap? Part of it's due to our lifestyle. As we've progressed economically, we've shifted dietary patterns to more of a Western style diet, rich in simple sugars, animal proteins, and fats. There's a little bit of confusion on what are good sources of fiber, and is there enough fiber in these sources. Others believe that they already are getting adequate intake, but we know that's not the case. And then we have some dietary trends like gluten-free, wheat-free, and grain-free diets. There's also the perception that there's negative digestive effects with fiber. And that may be true in some cases, but balanced intake, we don't see that as often. There's perceived objectionable taste to fiber, and a perceived high cost, and difficulty in food preparation. But according to a survey done in 2014 by the International Food Information Council, more and more people are actively seeking out whole grains. They're eating more fruits and vegetables, according to this survey. And they're eating more foods with fiber. So there's an overall improved general awareness of the health benefits of fiber. We just need to eat more. So what is dietary fiber? Well, it's the naturally occurring fibers that are intrinsic and intact in plants. And they can also be added or isolated synthetic, non-digestible, soluble, and insoluble carbohydrates that have a beneficial effect for humans. So non-starch polysaccharides, resistant starches that that are undigestible, and resistant oligosaccharides. So polysaccharides of something other than of glucose. They also have soluble and insoluble type of fibers. In general, they resist digestion and they're fermented, so they're metabolized by the bacteria in our large intestine or colon. And then a subset of dietary fibers are prebiotics. And in the mid-90s, the term prebiotic was first defined by Glenn Gibson and Marcel Roberfreud. And then in 2010, the definition was updated so that it's defined as a selectively fermented ingredient that results in specific changes in the composition or activity of our gastrointestinal microbiota. And these have health benefits on our host. So in summary, we have a fiber. It selectively stimulates the growth of certain bacteria, and this is beneficial for our health. And many of these probiotic bacteria belong to the genera or the group of organisms called Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus. And the known prebiotics, what the scientists have really had the most research on is inulin, fructooligosaccharides, galacto-oligosaccharide, and human milk oligosaccharides. And there's some potentially emerging prebiotics like resistant starch, pectin, and arabinoxylan. So we've already discussed some of the health benefits like lowering blood glucose with fiber intake or cholesterol levels. It also helps reduce calorie intake by making us feel a little bit fuller. They also have some satiety effects, which I'll talk about later. And it helps with our general overall digestive health. But what we've really had some profound information developing over the past decade or so is how dietary fibers affect the gut microbiota. So between 2013 and 2017, there were about 13,000 scientific publications just on the gut microbiota. And that's about the same number of publications that occurred in the previous 40 years. So we're learning a lot, and there's a lot of new information that's out there. So I would point you to some key resources like the American Gut Project or the Human Food Project that are led up by Rob Knight, Jeff Leach, and Jack Gilbert, or the Human Microbiome Project by the NIH, or the MetaHit project in Europe, metagenomics of the human intestinal tract. So what prebiotics and probiotics are in Pure? Pure contains inulin. It also contains flaxseed, watermelon seed, and pumpkin seed. And it has about a gram and a half, slightly more inulin per stick. And it has a probiotic blend of 100 billion CFUs, primarily composed of different Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus. So what is inulin? It's a longer chain fructooligosacharide. It was first discovered in the 1800s by a German scientist named Valentin Rose, when that scientist isolated it from the roots of elfdock, also called wild sunflower. It's a very rich source of inulin, but other natural sources that are more common probably in our food environment are chicory root, Jerusalem artichoke, asparagus, leeks, and onion. And it's a polymer fructose between 2 and 60 fructose units. That's a linear chain. It's a water-soluble prebiotic or dietary fiber. It has a neutral flavor, and it has some sweetness, but very few calories. So it's about 1.5 calories per gram. 90% of it reaches our colon, so it bypasses, it goes to our stomach, transits the small intestine, and 90% reaches our colon where it can be fermented by our gut bacteria. And it's in our colon where the magic happens. We get acetate, propionate, and butyrate. These are short-chain fatty acids that are important for our health. But inulin's also, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but inulin's also been shown to reduce blood triglycerides and cholesterol. And this is partially due to its effect on decreasing liver lipogenesis, so a reduction in fat storage and synthesis. And overall, it has what's called a bifidogenic effect because it helps stimulate the growth of bifidobacteria. So in our colon, we have more than 400 different types of bacteria, and we also have some some other microorganisms, but for the most part, it's bacteria that inhabit our gut. We have more than 1 trillion that live on us and in us. And by mass, about 50% of our digesta is made up of microorganisms, belonging mostly to 5 phyla. These are higher classification organisms. Firmicutes, which Lactobacillus belongs to, Bacteroidetes, Actinobacteria, which is where the phylum that Bifidobacterium belongs to, Microbia, and Proteobacteria. So stimulating Lactobacillus and Bifidobacteria, this is the prebiotic effect of inulin, or it's also called a bifidogenic effect. So by manipulating our gut, by using fibers or prebiotics, this can be used as a dietary approach to help decrease certain gastrointestinal diseases like irritable bowel diseases, inflammatory bowel diseases like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. The fermentation of inulin drops the pH in our colon, and this helps with mineral absorption. So calcium, magnesium, iron, and this is due to, as I mentioned, the decrease in pH. So it's beneficial for our bone health. The short chain fatty acids I talked about, there's evidence that they may enhance expression of hormones or decrease the expression of hormones, like affecting ghrelin, the hunger hormone. That helps regulate our appetite. There's also evidence of stimulating the immune system, and this is through enhancement of the innate immune responses and decreases in reported infections in a clinical trial that used inulin. So I mentioned that some folks feel that certain dietary fibers may cause some digestive issues, but inulin has really less of that effect compared to other things like sorbitol or lactulose. So it's got less of a purgative effect. And the gas that's produced during fermentation, when inulin is consumed in practical doses, 5 to 10 grams or less, it's pretty well tolerated by most folks. So to kind of summarize, what are some of the health promoting mechanisms of fibers? There's a couple, or 3 major mechanisms: bulking, viscosity, and fermentation, producing short chain fatty acids and changes in our microbiota. The health benefits include managing blood sugar levels, insulin responses, cholesterol, mineral absorption, GI health, normal immune function. But really, these are all great, but how do we consume more? And the answer to this is somewhat challenging. There's no best way to help an individual or even a population change dietary patterns. But one method that's gaining broad appeal for changing behavior is called nudging. And nudging was popularized by an economist named Richard Thaler. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2017. And the idea is that if we can nudge someone just to eat one more serving a day of fiber, for example, we see, we're starting to see changes in dietary intakes. And this makes it easier because people don't necessarily know how many grams of fiber they're consuming, or how many they have to add or go out of their way in finding options. So just adding one more serving of fiber is really key. And then the next key is to nudge the addition of another serving after it becomes a habit. So over time, we start nudging folks into achieving recommended fiber intake. So if you think about an increase of 1.5 to 3 grams a day of fiber, would be about 5 to 10% of your fiber requirements. So the key is these smaller incremental changes in increasing our fiber intake, and then seeing the benefits of enhanced dietary fiber intake on our overall health. So I hope I've answered some questions. I hope I've stirred up some questions that you'll go out and investigate and learn. The American Gut Project is a great resource. So I encourage you to find out more about dietary fibers and the gut microbiota.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Walker. There's a couple things that came to my mind while you were talking, and I hope I can ask just a couple of quick questions. But isn't it true that in the years that I've talked about probiotics, having been in this industry and other companies, I have a huge belief in what a probiotic can do and what we need. But in our history, our ancestors consumed foods that were a lot more fermented. They had a lot more of this natural bacteria in it. And now we live in an environment in a day and age where there's so much processed elements for safety reasons, for all the right reasons, that balance of taking a probiotic, with the prebiotic and so forth, we really need to become more and more aware of that, because we don't get the type of fermentation, the good bacteria, to create that positive gut flora than our ancestors. What would you say to that?
I agree with you. Eli Metchnikoff is the father of fermentation in my mind. He was the one that did all of the yogurt research, and we need to get back to eating more of these foods that have live cultures, and having a wider a more resilient gut microbiota with many different bacteria. As we reduce the number of types of bacteria, it becomes dysbiotic, and that allows certain bacteria to outcompete others. But when you have more, a wider number of species, you're more resilient. So it's definitely something that we need to do more of, is have more live cultures in our food, for sure. And then prebiotics too, and not just prebiotics, but dietary fibers are good foods too.
As far as the other element that I learned early on was the notion, again, when we're conceived and we're in our mother's womb, the first item that kind of is created before we have our arms and our legs is the gut tube, right? And maybe you could speak about this, but I've always learned that gut tube, because that's the center, the core of our being, it's the most important part, but really overlooked in so many arenas. But it's great for the immune system. It's so much great for just our overall health. And again, I'm not a doctor, just things I've read, but I just know if that's been like the essence of who we are, the core of that, then there really does need to be a great care to ensure that we have good gut health. So this information has been super helpful. Is there anything you'd like to add as we wrap up today?
I appreciate you. I enjoy this time with you, and I hope I spark some interest in learning about deeper about these bioactive compounds and how they affect our health. So thanks a lot, Russ. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I do. I love the end where you said, I hope it sparks questions. And I hope that each one of you out there, as you listen to this, that you will continue to understand the importance of overall health, and really come to the realization that through our products at Rain, our seed-based nutrition, that really allows us to get back to the genesis of life through seeds, and incorporating these other key and components and constituents within our products and our formulations make for a very strong, robust supplement that helps individuals, of course, get that health that they need. And so thank you again, Dr. Walker. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and being with us today. Make it a great day, and let's go make it rain. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.